We'll go ahead and get started, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've got a pretty good crew online, and I know we might have even a few more join us as we get rolling at the noon hour. We had a lot of RSVPs, so I wanted to make sure we gave everybody a few extra minutes to get online with us. But we really appreciate your interest in joining us today. I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible, if you will, but just wanted to go over a little bit of what our training center is and what the Leadership Institute is going to be, and how we've been successful in that in the first year. So let me go to that next slide. And as you can see, we've got a pretty strong team at the Region 6 Public Health Training Center. The Region 6 Public Health Leadership Institute is kind of a mission area within the training center. And for those of you that are not familiar with the training center, I'll get into that in just a few minutes. But here is the core team of the training center, as well as those that are comprising the leadership core team, the Leadership Institute core team. We have Lou Ann White, who's not with us today, and myself, Stephen Murphy. She and I are the two lead investigators for the funding that secures the funding for Region 6 Public Health Training Center from HRSA. Angela Breckenridge is going to be our director of the Public Health Leadership Institute, and she is unfortunately not able to join us today. She's ill today. So, but we'll be able to handle all the questions and comments and give you guys a great overview of the sessions that we just concluded, as well as some of the ideas we have for next year's cohort. Chuck Shorter is our program manager, who you guys will probably hear from over the course of the Leadership Institute, should you apply and get accepted into the program. And David Mora is probably someone you've heard from our communications channels within the Public Health Training Center. And Janine Clark and Stacey Earb are the two instructional design experts that actually create the Leadership Institute learning system, or should I say the learning courses and the curriculum, but also the trainings that are online on our training system, on our training center, the learning management system there that hosts all the training. And so the core team has been around for a while, and like to think it's a pretty well-oiled machine. So just a little bit of background into this, looking back into the training center a little bit before we jump into the actual Leadership Institute, is something that we find to be very valuable to help kind of tie together what we're doing and why we're trying to do it. We're going to explain our approach to it. We're going to explain some of the purpose behind it, some of the characteristics and eligibility criteria for those that may be interested in applying, or for some of those that may be joining us today that have personnel in their agencies that might be kind of your mentee, if you will, and you're joining to see if this would be an avenue to further enrich their careers as well. As we get further along in the program today, we'll talk a little bit more about the operations and logistics that help support the Leadership Institute itself. We'll talk a little bit more about the broad themes that we'll discuss in the topic sessions. We haven't ironed out exactly what topics and session material will be for each live session that we have, and we'll go through a little bit of that battle rhythm or that cadence that we'll see. But again, it's not going to be exactly what's going to be covered in that session, but we'll give you a really good idea of what you can expect. And we'll talk a little bit about how we'll answer some technical support concerns and some of the things that might come up within an asynchronous but remote Leadership Institute like this. We'll talk a little bit about the details of how that's going to operate, and then we'll leave it open for y'all to have some Q&A with some of us. And I think we have a recent graduate of the cohort from this past year joining us to talk a little bit as we go on from there. And so a little bit of the history here. HRSA originally funded some of the training centers in the year 2000, so it's been around for a while. But in that initial iteration, we were not under the same regional breakdown as we see today, with the 10 regional the 10 regions across the U.S. that the CDC, HHS, FEMA, et cetera, follow, and EPA and others. Originally, it was a partnership between really the Gulf South and Arkansas. So Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas developed some learning management system to deliver some asynchronous training. And that still kind of is our bread and butter today, the 24/7, 365, open access, free to the public, anywhere, anytime across the globe to those asynchronous learnings. That Leadership Institute in that first iteration was a separate funding mechanism. It hasn't been around and attached to every training center funding cycle through its existence, but it was there for a few years, funded on a separate line item, so to speak, and it concluded in 2008. In 2014, HRSA followed the larger breakdown of the regions. And so those of us on this call today, representing Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, the mnemonic of Talon, that is the new Region 6 partnerships from the HRSA funding stream. And so the Public Health Training Center here, Region 6, is now comprised of those 5 states in Region 6. And that's how we're broken down now. So that previous partnership was not necessarily dissolved, but it was shifted a little bit. And so Alabama and Mississippi are now part of Region 4. But as you can see there, in 2020, we had a little bit of a new mission area, or should I say a revisiting of an old mission area that became new again. So the Leadership Institute was part of the mission that was established in 2020 for the funding cycle. So that's why we're here today, talk a little bit about what we've done. Other regions are still trying to grapple with it as well. And so we're all in the same line. So some training centers had some leadership institutes that kind of evolved over time and were in place. Others were starting from scratch. We weren't necessarily starting from scratch. We were kind of in between, and we feel like we hit the ground running last year. And we'll talk a little bit about how that went. So helping inform some of our Leadership Institute and some of our training center agenda and steering us into success is a continued partnership. We couldn't do it without our community-based training partners across Region 6. We're always looking to expand them as well, but these on your screen here, that I'm not going to read everyone out to you, but I can't speak highly enough of our engagement with each of these institutions and agencies and departments across Region 6. We couldn't get it done without them. And this is where we really operate a well-oiled machine, because they inform us of how things should look. They inform some of the vision and some of the trainings that we need to do and how we need to march forward in each funding cycle. So kudos to everybody that is on here. Really, really important partnerships. And for those that aren't very familiar with the regional breakdowns, you can see in orange there, Region 6 representing our states, but you can see the other regions on your screen. So if you're not from Region 6, or if you have a partner or colleague or in your network, somebody that wants to entertain some of these trainings, you can always take the trainings at some of these regional breakdowns. Somebody in Region 10 could certainly take our Region 6 Public Health Training Center trainings. However, they cannot be an applicant accepted into our Leadership Institute. We can only have applicants in Region 6 apply and be accepted. So if you have colleagues outside of the Region 6 network that want to go into a Leadership Institute, we can always steer you to those individuals. But you can also see here the breakdown of the centers there, or should I say the regions, and we can tell you who's in what region based on our colleagues over there. So overall, the Public Health Training Center's mission there, pretty straightforward: strengthen the capacity of the public health workforce. We do that through professional development. We train the future public health workforce through student internships, and we have technical assistance that we can provide to the professionals and the agencies across Region 6 and even beyond. Again, that doesn't limit our training center from being utilized by those outside of Region 6. So we have a lot of partners that come in and take different trainings across the U.S. that take different trainings in different regions. Some of our major activities are pretty self-explanatory there. We do a lot of professional development and a lot of those trainings that are there for the public health workforce, for the practitioners on the front line and those that are not on the front line. We do student field placements, which is a big push for our training center itself, the bigger picture item there. And again, we launched our Leadership Institute in 2023, the fall of 2023. And again, we provide technical assistance when warranted and when requested, if we can fill it. If we can't, we can certainly try to push you to an area that might be better suited. So, a little bit of history. Sorry for the fire hose historical context there, but the training center is kind of the I guess the overarching component here of the Public Health Leadership Institute. So we wanted to give a little context and a little shout out, so to speak, to our partners that are helping inform us as we march forward on these training center initiatives. But the purpose of the Public Health Leadership Institute in Region 6, nuts and bolts. We want to develop that next generation of public health leaders. You know, the emerging leaders are the future of our public health enterprise. We've seen a lot of changes in our public health workforce. We've seen on the heels of COVID-19, a lot of the workforce start to get decimated, whether that's an early retirement, phase retirement, whether that's something that's, you know, forcing us to be in positions that we're not as well suited for. So we want to make sure that our emerging leaders, those that are coming into that next level of leadership and management philosophies and supervisory roles, are going to be well positioned for success. And so that's kind of how we've taken the Region 6 Leadership Institute. Our approach to doing that is really on the virtual session. We understand Region 6 is very, very vast, geographically speaking. And so we want to utilize what we know we can do, whether it's asynchronous learning from the training center or from the Leadership Institute. We have this virtual platform. We want to take advantage of it. And that's how other regions are doing it as well. So we will be all virtual for, you know, saving those budget dollars as well. We're going to cover practice-oriented topics, again, leveraging our expert partners across Region 6, as well as some of those that have actually jumped on a steering committee that are helping us better position our future leaders with topics that are relevant, with topics that are meaningful and really in need of establishing a leadership core to go forward. We have a community of learning and networking across the region, again, trying to figure out what best topics to offer, but also, or should I say cover, but also having a diverse, I guess, student cohort, without saying students, so I guess participant cohort, to learn from one another, from the diverse background and the broad wealth of, I guess, expertise and experience across Region 6. We want to make sure that we have the right people in the room together so that we all learn from that approach as well. This will be no tuition, no fees involved, 100% free to you as the applicant that could be accepted into the program. We only require a commitment to actively engage and participate in both the live sessions that we have, but also in some of the off-session asynchronous learning activities to help us get you to that next level. We can't just attend live sessions and not do the work on the off time. We want to capitalize on our time together. And so that commitment to participate is really important. And so applications are now open. I believe you might have heard, if you haven't heard from David in the announcements from our Region 6 Public Health Training Center, you can see the tiny URL there. Maybe somebody can drop that in the chat. Applications are open. And some of the criteria that we have, the eligibility criteria, obviously you have to be working in Region 6. Now, you might reside just on the outside of one of the state lines that you still work in Region 6. That's okay. You have to be applying your skill set to improve Region 6 public health. That is the bottom line. And so that's first and foremost. And we want to try to target those mid-management, and we change, instead of mid-career, it's more mid-management. We felt like we might have done a little bit of a disservice, or not a perfect communication strategy last year, but the mid-management person with 5+ years in public health is really what we're targeting. We have found that there is a lot of leadership program and training for those in leadership positions. And that's not often needed, or maybe it's not often the case that we have those that are going to fill those leadership roles in the coming years. They don't have these leadership opportunities to hone their skills, to recognize their skills, to recognize what type of leader they are. And so we want that mid-management professional. We want to have a little bit of supervisory experience with that mid-management person as well. That might come from just a programmatic oversight with a few direct reports, something like that. We're flexible in that, but we do want to make sure that the person that is applying has some supervisory type of work. And they need to be employed in public health, healthcare, in the governmental space, tribal, nonprofit agencies and organizations across Region 6. We've also recognized that budget limitations in public health, obviously we're all in public health and we know those exist, kind of perpetually underfunded area of our workforce, but sometimes we have contractors that are directly working full-time but are contracted to a public health agency in the region, and those are okay to apply too. So please don't think that you have to have that governmental email address, or should I say the full employment with that governmental agency or that healthcare agency or whatever the case is. If you're on the contract side, that's okay too. Submit an application. We do not have specific educational requirements. It's more job-based. Again, the commitment to participate is going to be important. We want to hear how you're going to position yourself to commit to this. We do require that to be part of our, I guess, quote unquote, graduation requirements, active engagement and participation in the live and the asynchronous learnings that we're going to go through. So the activities are going to be not overwhelming, but we do want you to participate in them. And we do want some support from your employer. And that's not to say it should be a barrier, but we want to make sure that you have supported time, because we don't want you to be overcommitted as an individual applicant to this. And so we've recognized that maybe that letter up front is not necessarily something that we can do or should do, but maybe just on the back end, once we get some accepted individuals into the cohort, we want to make sure that that employer is going to support you. And so requiring that to devote those 2 to 3 hours per week in these learning activities is going to be important, not just for us to know that you're going to be there, but just for you to know that you're going to be protected, not doing the day-to-day job that you were hired to do. This is a professional development time for you, and we want that to be protected. And so we launched this again, as I mentioned before, last year. We just concluded our first cohort. We had a lot of current public health topics discussed. We got on tangents, which was even further enriching our time together. Current topics, issues that surfaced throughout the conversations as we brought some of the backbone of leadership strategy and development into the current situation and the environment that we just went through, for example, with the pandemic, or some of the situations that we're facing in our own backyards. Region 6 is not, we've got a large swath. We're frontier, we're rural, we're tribal, we're urban. So we have a lot of different experiences coming to the table, and that was very, very enriching for the entire cohort. We focus on building the skills for practical applications. We don't want this to be textbook. We don't want this to be theory, although there will be peppered in there, but we want this to be very practical. We want you to be able to take what you have, what you experience in this cohort, into practice the very next day you hear it. As you further hone your skills and what was covered, or what kind of work you might have done, activity, and put it into practice right away. Obviously expanding the vision and building leadership skills to be used at all levels of public health. So we're not expecting this to be a launching point to, send us into the stratosphere of executive leadership either. This is going to be really important for everybody to build their leadership skills going forward in every stage of their careers. And so this is a nice way for us to really build a strong foundation in where we are now, but also apply it to some of the, if you're on the early side of that 5 years and you have some members in your cohort that have been in there for 20 years, that's okay too. We're going to learn from one another, and we're going to try to meet in the middle and advance everybody forward. Even if those folks that are a little bit more seasoned, we're still going to push that envelope. And so we're trying to expand the leadership development skills as we go through the entire cohort process together. It is a very dynamic, and we hope it continues. We had a lot of lively discussions this past year, and that's our intentional approach to this. We want everyone to talk about their situation. We want everybody to learn from one another as much as they learn from the subject matter expert that's going to be delivering that session, that content. So we'll bring in those experts across the U.S., not just from public health, that are going to be very specialized in a very niche area of leadership skill development or some sort of communication, whether it's crisis communication, whether it's communications vertically and horizontally, and how you get to know your organization. We're going to bring in experts. And once you hear the conversation in the sessions that are going on, learning from one another in your own backyard of how you see that, or how you've experienced that, or what kind of challenge you've overcome utilizing some of these skills. That's going to bring some dynamic conversations to the platform with us. And it'll also bring in some really nice networking opportunities for us. As I mentioned, the Region 6 Public Health Training Center is only successful due to the partnerships we have helping us drive this. And we want that to be a networking opportunity for you as well. I think that the folks that went through this first Leadership Institute cohort will attest to that. Probably made some new friends, new colleagues. I hope that us at the Region 6 Training Center will always be there, able to respond to all their emails or inquiries, and we stay in touch with them too. So not just from the cohort, but from those of us over here at Tulane as well. So some of the topics that you can expect to hear from, these will be our live session topics. Again, we might have a few live sessions dedicated to one of these topics. So for example, maybe we have 2 different sessions for communications, or maybe we have 2 different sessions for leadership development or evolution. But you can see here, this is really where we kick off with that emotional intelligence self-assessment. That's going to be the first thing that we do, and we found that to be extremely valuable. Everybody needs to know more about themselves in order to know what type of style they have in leadership, to know what type of biases they may even have without even realizing it. So that kind of sets the tone for everybody to view the entire live sessions and all the activities that we'll have in Leadership Institute. You're viewing it now through an improved lens of self-awareness, and that's been very valuable. So we'll go into recognizing what type of leadership style you have, some health disparities and recognizing those. We'll go through mentoring in some capacity, and public health ethics and professionalism as it relates to leadership, but also public health and how we navigate those. Communications, whether that's crisis communications, whether that's actual communications into a community, community engagement type of conversations, whether that's media type of work as well. Organizations and systems thinking is going to be 1 or 2 sessions as well. Leadership and crisis leadership, or should I say leadership and organizational evolution, I mentioned that, but also crisis leadership. We'll definitely have a crisis leadership component in there. And that's not to necessarily mean everybody that has interest in the Leadership Institute has to have some sort of crisis role or some sort of crisis experience. public health went through a crisis. The globe went through a crisis. And, for the last 3 years, some would say it's still going a little bit. But regardless, we need to actually see how those leadership skills evolve and are put into action during crisis moments, whether that's a pandemic or just a crisis locally. And so, again, we'll post the actual sessions once we iron this out in the summer of 2024. But you can expect that these themes will definitely be part of our live session discussions, as well as some of the offline activities. So the format and scheduling is not ironed out again because we don't know exactly what sessions they are, but you can expect in August of 2024, the first thing we will do is have that consultant come in and will lead us through an emotional intelligence assessment. And so you will complete it on your own time. And then you will have actual feedback with this expert consultant in a one-on-one fashion. And that will take place all before we meet as a cohort for a live session. That one-on-one feedback is going to be really invaluable for us as we go forward through the program. You'll create an individual plan based on that for areas of growth, and identifying those ways to enhance your skills, and going forward based on what you learn, not only in that first session, but as we go forward, you'll start to see how that kind of plays out. We will have holiday breaks, if you will. And so you can expect a big break in mid-December and January. And so we recognize that's a pretty bad time for everybody to be participating in extracurriculars, because there's enough extracurriculars outside of work in those times. And so we're looking at a September 2024 through mid-spring, early spring of 2025 as the length of this next cohort. And so you can expect those to be ironed out again by summer of 2024. So starting in September, the applicants that get accepted, the cohort will begin to have every other week we'll meet live. And so approximately 2 to 3 hours will be the extent of our live sessions together. They'll be led by an expert in that topic area, with discussions, debates, and other activities, whether that's some sort of plan arrangement or some sort of strategy, or maybe we bring in some SWOT analyses here and there that will be broken out into different groups and report backs and discussions about how those all sussed out, led by that expert as well. It will probably include a good amount of small work on the synchronous side of the sessions. And so we find value there. We'll sprinkle you into different groups together, depending on the applicant diversity with backgrounds and experiences. We'll maybe strategically place groups together in certain folks in certain topic areas, but it'll usually be random, and to help grow each other and to hear from one another, a little more intimate session. You'll have a lot of that peer-to-peer learning based on those breakout sessions as well. And at the end of each session, it's really important for us to improve for your next session, but also for the next year's cohort too. We'll have a little bit of an evaluation. It won't take you 5 to 7 minutes probably to do that, but just tell us a little bit about you, about your session and your feelings of it. So that's kind of how the virtual live sessions will run. And we'll have off-week activities as well to help support that as it relates to reinforcing whatever type of topic we're talking about after that session, or maybe there's some prepare read-ins, kind of pre-reads that you need to do, or maybe to get everybody kind of level setting coming into the session. Those will all be provided for you. They will be provided for you. I'm jumping the gun, but they will be provided for you here. So every member that gets accepted, we will give you access to what we're going to probably call the leadership hub in some way, shape, or form. But it'll be a secure access to a sandbox, if you will, that we will host the agenda, we'll host the recordings, we'll host the links to the recordings, I should say. We'll host the links to your Zoom sessions every week. It'll be kind of the go-to source for you so that you don't have to go and find certain emails from us from a week ago, or something that you got to dig through your inbox. You know, if you're like me, I leave my desk for an hour and I've got another 100 emails that I got to sift through. So we don't want that to happen. So this is a go-to source. It'll be the same links in there every time for the Zoom calls that you can access. On that is also a discussion thread that you can pose technical assistance questions, as David posted in the chat. We'll have some running group discussions, if you will, some threads that can actually be relevant to whatever topic it is, or maybe some challenges you're experiencing and you want some Region 6 expert eyes on it, and you can share it with your cohort and say, hey, I've encountered this. So we'll keep that secure. Only those that are in the cohort have access to this. So do not think that this is going to be shared with anybody else. So it's a safe space to discuss all of these things. But it's a really successful model, and I feel like it relieves us a little bit from that inbox overload. It's a nice centralized place to find everything. So some of the things that you can expect to need in order to be successful here, you obviously have to be able to access a computer with a web camera, because that's going to be important for us to be a little bit more intimate than a black box and maybe a still frame shot of each other. Got to have a microphone, and got to have a little bit of a stable internet connection. Quiet space is desirable, especially if it's a live session. We understand there are going to be challenges here. We understand life happens, but just give us a heads up if you're encountering those problems, or if you're, say, at work and you can't break out into your room or something like that, into your office space. Just let us know. Drop us a note. Maybe we can help give you an immediate connection, or maybe we can point you directly to that live session once it's finished in a recording. You can go and view it later, things of that nature. Just gives us a heads up. We do want you to be an active participant. So that's really important for that space. If you can find a quiet area that you can close off for the live sessions, because we do want you to feel safe to engage. But we also want you to feel like you can engage. We don't want you to be quiet over there just because it's your workspace. And also everybody else that's in your cohort is going to want to hear from you. And we learn from one another as much as we do the experts. And obviously the follow-up work is going to be important for us as we go through. There will be a point of reflection for everybody. You can go back and view these recordings at any time. We'll give you access to those recorded files. We'll give you constant access to all the activities in the asynchronous fashion for you to go back through, maybe revisit, improve as you continue to learn more about yourself and more about leadership styles that you may have, and more about your organizational, or should I say more about how your leadership style applies to your organization. Maybe there's things you want to go and revisit. So you'll have constant access to these things over the course of the cohort together. And at the end, you'll have a nice, beautiful certificate demonstrating your effort and all the time and commitment that you gave to the Leadership Institute to successfully complete it. We have, through our technical experts, David and Stacy have created a digital badge. It's a shareable digital badge that will highlight the completion of this Leadership Institute. We'll provide you with some other goodies upon graduation, but we'll also link you to one another on LinkedIn so that we have a constant connection with one another without the Leadership Institute running, should I say, for our live sessions. You'll have that forever LinkedIn connection with us. And so that's going to be important as we try to stay in touch with one another and learn. Again, these applications are open now. David posted that in the chat. We must have a completed application for this to be a successful application and potential acceptance into the Leadership Institute. We need to have an updated resume. I think that's obvious. Please update that if you haven't. I recommend updating that pretty much every month. Visit that resume, make sure you document all the successes that you go through. And we will get that letter from your supervisor once admission into the cohort happens. And I think, and David mentioned in the chat there that we'll have access to Tulane's box file system for the cohort, so that we can actually access some of these things, the files that we submit, or some of the readings that we go through, even extra readings if you're interested in it. Some of our experts will provide those, and we can document those, and they can live in that file system. And we'll also have that YouTube playback channel for some of the recordings. And again, you will have that dedicated box file access, as well as this dedicated secure sandbox, digital sandbox, if you will. I will stop there, but I think we have one of our recent graduates. I can't see everybody on this call, but I think, is Tim still with us?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Oh, great. Hey, Tim. Sorry, I couldn't find you on with sharing my screen.
No worries.
I will stop sharing there for a second. And Tim, would you mind jumping on and telling us a little bit about your experience this past year as one of our excellent candidates that just went through the program?
Al, thank you. I appreciate that, Dr. Murphy. I will take issue with one thing you said. You said we're not students, but we're participants, and I couldn't disagree more. You are students when you come to the Leadership Institute. You become students of leadership and students of yourself. I learned so much looking introvertedly into myself and discovering things that I didn't know, starting from the get-go with the emotional assessment, learning about the different leadership styles. It's really eye-opening if you put the time into it and you commit the effort to doing it. That said, I don't know that the off week hours really take 3 hours all the time. Some weeks it's just an hour. Other times it might be 4. There's some good readings in there, a lot of videos to watch that are excellently produced. And there's a lot of good speakers that come in during your virtual sessions. The people you learn from are people who've been in public health and leadership positions for a long time. And they very selflessly explain their positions and what they've done, what they've learned. They convey that to you for you to internalize and make your own. So this program, it is indeed a program. It's not something that you just come in for a couple weeks and done. It's like literally a full college semester. And it is that kind of grind of a full semester. You've got to get that commitment to it. Everybody's life gets crazy. I mean, I went right through the middle of our NOFO drop for a public health emergency preparedness grant and still had to make time and commitment for that. So with that said, the leadership that run the program are very understanding. Anytime I had any questions or sent emails in, they were very, very responsive. Even as an example, 2 minutes before this meeting, I couldn't get my link to work, and instantly they sent me another one to get in so I could speak with you all today. Great program, well worth it. If anybody ever wants to ask me anything about it, feel free to reach out through Dr. Murphy or the Leadership Institute. I'll be glad to help anybody with anything there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim.
Yes, sir.
Whoops. So with that said, Tim was an awesome participant in our Leadership Institute last time. And I think from our side of the house, we learn as much from y'all as sometimes we learn from the folks leading the session. And that was the case. And so we got to share so many things with the cohorts, the members of the cohort last year, and really take into account what they might have been going through or some of their challenges, and kind of envision how we might go through something similar, or how we might go through a resolution to something, whether it was exactly the same thing or not, it was still so useful to bounce these things off of one another. I can't overstate that. But at this time, I'd love to hear if you all had any questions. I'm very open to taking the questions. I think our team here as well. I'll be quiet and open this for an opportunity for anybody to ask any questions. And feel free to just jump in. You don't necessarily have to raise your hand. No questions? It was that good of a presentation. It was that good of a slide deck that was, it was Tim's. Tim's comments sold it. All right, well, if there are not any questions, I think we can end a few minutes early. We do have some information that was on our closing slide. My slides went off. Oh, you do have questions? I didn't see them. Oh, they're in the Q&A. I'm so sorry. I was looking in the chat. Do we have a specific number of years of experience? So we want you to have at least 5 years of public health practice, with some of those being in a supervisory role. We don't want you to have just a month of some sort of supervision. I don't think we necessarily need to have 5 years of it. But I would encourage you to apply. I would encourage you to be honest on your application, and just tell us. So again, probably 5 years of public health is more important than 5 years of the supervision, right? Let's see. The online website states application will continue to be accepted. Yeah, so the applications, we will probably at June 1st take those applications that we have. We're constantly getting applications. We want to be sensitive and real to our ability to deliver the product in a sense that everybody benefits from it, that it's not overwhelming. And so we're probably targeting somewhere between, and this is kind of getting into the next question, probably targeting somewhere between 30 to 40 accepted applicants. And if that is the case, before June 1st hits, we're going to take them in the time that they're submitted. So I would encourage you all, if you're considering applying, to go ahead and try to get that application in. Because like I've said, we've already received a few applications, and they're coming in pretty quick. So that's going to be important. And if you don't get in, I just want to say this: if you don't get in, or for whatever reason, we'll have it again next year. And there's also room for those that might be on the cusp of not having that 5-year commitment to public health yet. Get another year under your belt and apply the following year. So this is not a one-time shot. Just wanted to make sure we were aware of that too. Any other questions? Have I missed any? Let's see. All right, so David's answered a lot of the questions. Anything else that anybody wants to bring up? Q&A in the chat or speak. All right, well, going once, going twice. All right. Well, David, do you want to put in the chat? There you go. You did. I see it now. I was going to say, email the leadership email address there, posted in the chat. we will get back to you as soon as possible and look forward to seeing your applications in the near future, I hope. Thank you all so much for joining us. Tim, thank you so much as well for joining us today. I know times are busy in Texas right now. So thank you all so much.